Hello one, hello all to another box office report. Got a couple of things I want to talk about today between Wakanda Forever, Black Adam's profitability, and the menu. In case you're new to the channel, this is a video where I'm going to be breaking down my key takeaways of the box office report, something that I've been paying attention to for the last decade of my life. I would usually just look at these numbers and come to my own conclusions, but I think these videos are fun just because I get to talk about stats the same way I would with sports. Ultimately, this report is what determines what movies get made. You know, if a certain genre of movie makes a lot of money, you can expect to see a lot more of that in the future. Now, we don't have a whole lot to talk about this week in regard to new releases, but I did want to touch on the menu really quick. The menu opened up to number 2 in the domestic box office this weekend with just over $9 million. And worldwide, after one weekend, it's made $15 million based off of a budget of $30 million. Now, that budget does not include marketing, so if I had to guess, I would say they probably need to make around $40 to $45 million in order to break even. And for the most part, a movie's going to make a bulk of its money in its first weekend. There are exceptions to that, of course, but I don't see this movie coming out in Thanksgiving weekend and having a huge second weekend showing. It's a very weird, very different sort of horror comedy, and so while I think it's going to make some money, you aren't going to see families show out to this the same way you're going to have families go to Black Panther Wakanda Forever, The Fabelmans, Glass Onion, you know what I'm talking about. So my big question in looking at this is this movie going to be able to generate a profit for the studio? Right now, it's really borderline because I don't see it having huge legs. It's very well received. I really enjoyed the movie. In fact, I have a review on it if you want to watch that after this video. But it's very questionable at this point. $15 million worldwide. You need to make another $30 million in my opinion. I don't know if this movie is gonna have the legs that it needs in order to hit that. Which is too bad. I really like this movie. I like the stars that are in it, so it's disappointing that it's not making the sort of money that it should. And it is the second movie from Anya Taylor-Joy this year that doesn't quite live up to its financial expectations. We have to remember The Northman came out in April, and while, again, like The Menu, it was very well received, it did not make a ton of money. So we're going to have to wait and see what The Menu does this weekend. At this point, I don't know if it's going to make a profit. If I had to guess one way or another, gun to my head, is this movie going to be profitable? I would say no. But it's weird to me that this movie costs $30 million because for the most part, it's in one location. There are exceptions and there are certain things where I can see the budget on the screen, but I'm not sure where all that $30 million went. I feel like you could have produced this for $10 million less dollars and we would have generally gotten the same movie out of it, but hey, what do I know? Alright, so now with that down, let's get into some breaking news regarding Black Adam. Now, I spoke about it in last week's box office report, but this movie was questionable to release in China at the time. You know, there were questions about whether or not it would be banned. China is very, very particular about what movies it lets into its market. Well, now it's looking like it is banned in China. No one's come out and officially said anything, but the further and further we get from the release date, the more outlets are coming out and saying, this thing's just not going to release over there, which is brutal for this movie. So far, it's made $360 million worldwide. It was number 4 in the domestic box office this weekend, only dropping 42%, racking in $4.5 million. It's doing its thing over here, but this movie was produced for $200 million, not including marketing. This movie very likely needed to make $400 million, $450 million in order to be profitable. Without China, it's not going to hit that. This thing is going to lose money for the studio. And part of why I think that it's just not going to release in China is apparently today, the 22nd of November, they are starting the digital run for this film. So to me, that says that the studio is saying, we need to recoup our losses. We need to rack in as much money as possible while the iron's hot. A lot of people are going to be together over Thanksgiving. They're not going to go to the theater to see Black Adam, or at least we don't think they are. So let's try to get people to order this on demand. Which is crazy to think that this movie will probably not end up being profitable for the studio because it's a superhero film starring The Rock. This thing should have been gangbusters. It should have had all the money in the world coming its way, but it didn't. So now we have to ask ourselves why. I think the biggest takeaway is probably that it was not super well received from the critics. It had a 40% Rotten Tomatoes. Now, you could push back on that with the example of Venom in 2018. That thing ended up making like $800 million worldwide because the audience really liked it, while the critics didn't. But that movie, I think, also is on the back of Spider-Man. So it did have that sort of brand built into it, even though we hadn't seen a Venom movie before, not counting Topher Grace's turn as him in Spider-Man 3. But people knew who Venom was. Nobody knew who Black Adam was. In my opinion, the marketing wasn't all that great, and then the movie came out and it wasn't really well received. And it's basically the consensus of the audience that those people who like the movie, like myself, know that it's not a good movie, but it's enjoyable. And it also makes you question when we're gonna see him again. Apparently a script is finished for Black Adam 2, or at least that's the rumor. I don't know if they can justify making another Black Adam movie if this thing's bound to lose like $100 million for the studio before VOD sales, of course. While I don't think this is the last time we've seen Black Adam in a movie, I don't know if we're going to see a sequel from him, or that people even want a sequel at this point. It doesn't seem to have any momentum coming into Thanksgiving weekend. Maybe you can see a push from everyone going to the theater, but my money would be on people to go see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, The Fabelmans, all those new movies that are out. Now the studio seems to be trying to recoup as much money as it can by putting it on VOD. It'll be interesting hearing what they plan to do with Black Adam in the future, but enough of that sad talk. Let's go ahead and get into a much happier topic, Wakanda Forever. Last week I sat here and I talked about how interesting it would be seeing what the second week returns for Wakanda Forever would be. And now we're here, and I can sit here and say that Wakanda Forever only dropped 63% after making $180 million in its opening weekend, and this weekend it made just over $66 million. And whenever you drop 63% for a movie that made $180 million its first weekend, that is excellent. What this tells me is that people went back to the theater, they invited their friends, they invited their family, and I think that this bodes very well for this movie going into Thanksgiving. And Wakanda Forever has already made over $500 million in the worldwide box office without China. So while Black Adam is struggling not having China, Wakanda Forever seems to be doing just fine. They're definitely losing money by not being in China, but for now they seem to be doing pretty well. Which, you know, it's hard to compare the two. Black Adam is a brand new superhero in DC. Wakanda Forever is an established franchise. It had a lot going against it. I mean, they lost their lead star here, but still, huge win for Wakanda Forever. And now I think we need to be talking about whether or not this movie's a billion-dollar film. And the most that I can do is compare it to another MCU movie that came out this year, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, Multiverse of Madness opened up to more money, but it had a worse second weekend. It made less money than Wakanda Forever did, and its percentage drop was substantially higher, as I'm sure you can imagine. That movie was just shy of $1 billion. I believe it was in the mid-900s, so I would reckon that Wakanda Forever seems like it's bound to make $1 billion at this point, worldwide that is. It has the Thanksgiving holiday coming up. I don't believe there's a whole lot of new releases coming in between Thanksgiving and Avatar, unless I'm just forgetting something. And it has a better percentage drop weekend over weekend, at least through the first and second weekend. And plus, generally, it seems like people just like Wakanda Forever more than they do Multiverse of Madness. So as of right now, I think Wakanda Forever will just make it over $1 billion. I don't think it's going to leap over it and make money the same way that the first Black Panther movie did, but hey, this is still a huge win. If your movie makes $1 billion, that is excellent. But that's everything that I have for today. Not a whole lot was going on, but I thought that there were just enough topics here to make a video about. I'll be really interested to see what happens this upcoming weekend for Thanksgiving. It's always a huge weekend at the box office. Surely should be some big numbers in there for new releases, as well as the movies I talked about here. Well, big numbers. It'll be a better weekend than it would have been if it was just any regular weekend for these films. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like it if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more. I'll see you next time.